I'm Dave Olson, editor of the Salem News, and welcome to the 6th District Congressional Debate, sponsored by the Salem News and the Jewish Journal. And welcome to this beautiful new auditorium. It's one of the cornerstones of the new high school here in Danvers. So before we begin, we should mention that the work at this school is not done. You've probably seen that coming in. The Danvers Educational Enrichment Partnership, which is a collaboration between the schools, local citizens, and business leaders, is spearheading a drive to raise $500,000 to support the technology needs of the new school. Oh, we're going to have to turn off our phones, too. So they've created a number of seat naming and sponsorship opportunities for that fundraiser. So you can actually sponsor the seat you're sitting in right now, and that'll go towards funding 10 new high-tech classrooms here in the high school. The Salem News is a media sponsor of the initiative, so it's something that's near and dear to our heart. Now on to our debate. The candidates tonight, in alphabetical order, are Libertarian Daniel Fishman of Beverly, Democrat John Tierney of Salem, and Republican Richard Tisei of Wakefield. In our panel tonight, you should cheer for them just as loud. Susan Jacobs, editor of the Jewish Journal. Helen Gifford, managing editor of the Salem News. And Lisa Kosan, president-elect of the Board of Overseers for the Jewish Journal and a longtime North Shore journalist. Now, I'm just going to explain how things are going to go tonight. The panelists will ask a question, and each candidate will have 3 minutes to answer. Then each candidate will have a chance for a 30-second rebuttal before we move on to the next question. Our timer tonight in the front row is Salem News community editor Muriel Hoffacker. Check down there. Should absolutely applaud Muriel. She'll hold up a sign when you're at 30 seconds to go, and then she'll hold up the dreaded red sign when you're at time. We're going to try and keep the time so we can get as many questions as we want. And in that vein, I would ask the crowd also to try and keep the cheering to a minimum until the end, because we do want to get as many questions as possible answered tonight. This is an important debate. This is an important election. So let's get to it. The first question will be from Lisa Kosan, and it'll start with John Tierney.
Many people on the North Shore are out of work and they're hurting. What specifically would you do as congressman, and if you're not congressman, you'll answer that as well, to allow people to get back to work and be fully and gainfully employed right here on the North Shore?
Well, thank you, Lisa. There are a number of different steps that have to be taken. The first, of course, would be to pass the President's Jobs Act, which was designed to do just that, to put people back to work. It would help our cities and our states and our towns be able to employ the teachers and firefighters and police that they need to have a full complement, so that we have a growing population of students, but we've had a decreasing number of teachers. We have to get that complement back. We have to keep our fire stations and police stations open and manned, and we have to make sure that that happens. That would put a significant number of people back to work at jobs that are necessary to be done. We would pass a transportation bill as part of that, and also make sure that we had some construction money for schools, repairs and maintenance, as well as construction. And that would put a lot of people in the private sector to work doing that. And it's a couple of million jobs if we do it right. And unfortunately, the Republican leadership in the House would not pass a 6-year transportation bill as we normally do, with the size, a robust size that we need. Instead, pass a much smaller piece of legislation on that does some work but not enough. And we need to move forward on that basis. In line with that, we need to make sure that our education system continues to be strengthened on that, and that our job training, job skills programs are done. I've written the Workforce Investment Act, and we have the version that I think is close to the one that Buck McCain, a Republican from California, drew. Unfortunately, instead of putting those bills forward to be worked out and presented, the current majority chose to put a very partisan bill in that's going nowhere fast. But we do need to make sure that we can ensure employers that they're going to have a workforce that is good, that has innovators, that has people that are qualified to do the jobs, whether it's energy technology or bioscience and nanotechnology and manufacturing. Innovative manufacturing is coming along, and we've supported projects like the E-Team in Lynn that's putting out over 100 different people to take over for the jobs that people are retiring from in that plant, Arwood and Newburyport, places in between, where we have good manufacturing jobs that are available. We are strengthened in that in this region and in Massachusetts compared to the other states, and we need to attract people back to this country. Our tax structure should encourage companies to create manufacturing and other job opportunities here, not encourage them to take jobs overseas. And we should make sure that our monetary policy and trade policies are enforced so that the encouragement, again, is to have jobs here. If we do those things, and we make sure that we make the strategic investments, even as we have to spend somewhat less because of our budget problems on that, make strategic investments that can grow the opportunity for jobs and strengthen this economy and move us forward, we'll be strengthening the idea of reducing the deficit as well, because people will be able to pay their taxes and contribute and move forward on that basis. So that's the plan, and we need to do it. If the President had been allowed to pass his Jobs Act, it would already be well underway. And I think the obstructionism is part of the problem why we're not proceeding even faster, despite the fact we've created over the last 30 months a significant number of private sector jobs.
Mr. Fishman.
Gary Johnson, who's the Libertarian candidate, said during one of the debates, "My neighbor's 2 dogs have created more shovel-ready jobs than the current administration." There's a reality to that. Government does not create jobs. Jobs are created when a small business person or a large business sees an opportunity and they think that they can make more money by employing somebody and profiting, using that person as part of a team to generate more income than they would lose in just a salary. That has nothing to do with government. That has to do with small businesses being willing to take a risk. And we have to have an environment in which businesses are willing to take those risks and in which those risks can be minimized so that they can say, I can take this risk and it's going to be worth it. Even if this particular one doesn't work out, I know that by bringing in an employee and trying this line of generating income, we are going to profit. A very specific thing that I'm proposing immediately, the first piece of legislation that I would write when I get there, something I call the first 3 are free. Right now, if a small business wants to hire an employee, to go from 0 employees to 1 employee is the same amount of paperwork that Walmart had to file to go from 0 employees to 1 employee. OSHA, taxes, all those things. If we were to eliminate those barriers, if we were to say that for a company to hire 1 employee, all they have to do is write that employee a paycheck, the employee can handle everything else. There are 20 million small businesses right now that have no employees in the United States. If even 1/6 of those would hire 1 employee, that would put 3 million people back to work. That's 1% of the population of the United States. That puts a pressure immediately on wages. That benefits every worker, because with that many people back to work, that shortage of workers is going to make everybody's salary go up. It's going to make the workers' work, their labor, worth more. That's something that we can immediately do. We can immediately get government out of the way and get some people back to work. Also on the North Shore, we have a big issue right now with the fishing industry suffering from the fact that there are fishing limits being placed that are impacting our ability to generate what has been a traditional industry for the North Shore. Fish farms have been proposed beforehand. I mistakenly said in the last debate, and this is how you know that I'm not a really good politician because I'm admitting that I made a mistake last time, I said there are no fish farms in Massachusetts. There actually is a freshwater fish farm in western Massachusetts. We have tremendous technology for aquaculture in our state. We can get government out of the way of fish farming on the North Shore, which is already a huge business on the Pacific coast, and immediately put our fishing industry in a much more competitive place. Thank you.
Mr. Tisei.
Well, I own a small business, and the last few years have been really tough, and I definitely understand what small businesses are going through. Right now, it's a very difficult time. I agree with Dan. You know, the government doesn't create jobs. The jobs are created by small businesses who usually have 10 or less employees. And I've spent a lot of time going around this district. I usually tour 5 or 6 businesses, small, medium, and large, every week. And I talk to the employees, I talk to the owners, and the owners all say the same thing to me. You know what, Richard, I'm not going to hire anybody right now because there's too much indecision. Nobody knows what the tax code's going to be. Nobody knows what the next regulation is going to be that's coming down. And people watch what's going on in Washington right now, and the place has become totally dysfunctional. So business owners don't feel comfortable and confident hiring people again. And most of our problems stem from the fact that we're not creating jobs anymore. We're not creating the type of jobs that you need to live, work, and raise a family here on the North Shore. Now, as the congressman for this district, I do a couple of things. First, one of the bright spots in our economy has been the fact that medical device companies here in the North Shore, we have one of the largest clusters in the United States. It's North Shore, Minneapolis, Southern California. They've been hiring people with jobs that pay between $60,000 and $75,000 a year. There's a new tax in Obamacare, 2.3% excise tax on medical device makers, not on whether or not they make a profit, but on their gross income. And you can go around the North Shore right now and talk to medical device companies. They're talking about hiring freezes and laying people off. There has been a vote that's come up in the Congress a number of times to repeal that tax. Congressman Tierney supports that tax. I think that that tax will be bad for the people of the district. Elizabeth Warren has come out and said this is a terrible tax that's going to stifle innovation. Nikki Tsongas and Bill Keating, congressmen in the state, voted to repeal that tax. But our congressman who had the most to lose, his constituents had the most to lose, is in favor of that tax. And I'd say the other thing you need to do is you need to create a better business climate in this country. Now, the 5 largest associations representing job creators in this country rate all of the congressmen every year on their votes. And here's how Congressman Tierney has been voting. He talked about manufacturing. The National Association of Manufacturers gave him a 14% rating, which means he votes against local manufacturers 86% of the time. The United States Chamber of Commerce gave him a 19%, which means he votes against them 81% of the time. National Federation of Independent Businesses, 0. He didn't vote with them once the entire session. National Retail Association, 0. Didn't vote with them once the entire session. National Small Business Association, 0. And these aren't partisan groups. The National Small Business Association gave Nikki Tsongas and Ed Markey a 66% rating. Congressman Tierney was the only member of the delegation to get a 0. And I think what I would do as the congressman of this district is I would be out there and as a member of Congress trying to push things together, bills together to provide some relief for small businesses.
We're going to keep the time. We're going to keep... We're going to keep the time, but we're going to keep the time. We have a timer up front who's doing the timing. We're going to keep the time. We're also going to let people finish their sentences. So 30 seconds to
Thank you.
Mr. Tierney.
Well, all of the organizations that Mr. Tisei said are all wings of the Republican Party, essentially, on that. And the fact of the matter is, the United States Chamber of Commerce agenda. Well, no, I don't think you're the problem. I think I was the problem on that.
All right, we'll hold on for a sec. We have a technical issue.
All right. Should I have to hold it up like that?
Yeah, it's hold.
One,
How's that?
two.
Can you hear?
Great.
All right.
All right.
Go ahead.
Is it all right now? Okay. First, the United States Chamber of Commerce, incidentally, supports privatizing Social Security, voucherizing Medicare, giving tax breaks for corporations to go overseas. I mean, you go right down the line, it's the Republican agenda on that basis. So being rated by them is not a problem for anybody that wants to be somebody who wants to create jobs and create them here in this country and protect people with Medicare and Social Security and things that are important. People in business aren't worried about being overregulated right now or paying too many taxes as much as they're concerned about the lack of customers and the lack of demand. And that's Ronald Reagan's advisors and George Bush's economic advisors saying that. We have lowered taxes 17 times for small businesses. Every Republican voted against it, and we need to make sure that we give the environment there that's going to create jobs.
Your
That's
time.
part of it.
All right. Mr. Fishman?
The very definition, can you hear me in the back? Nah. The very definition of a regulation is to put a restriction on business. It's exactly what it's meant to do. It's meant to regulate. You can make an argument that some regulations are necessary. Certainly there are some that we would say, sure, quality control on pharmaceuticals, inspection of pesticides that are being used. There are some regulations that make sense. but a regulation is always a restriction of some sort on business. We can make business work better by getting regulations out of the way. Thank you.
Mr. Tisei, 30 seconds.
Again, the organizations I mentioned aren't partisan organizations. They're organizations representing job creators. And the problem in this country right now is that the government, a lot of job creators perceive the government as being hostile. And when you're in that situation, you're not going to take a risk. You're not going to hire more employees. You're not going to expand your business. And everything boils down to the economy and the private economy. It's not a government economy. It's the private economy. And again, I own a small business. I understand what's going on. And I do think that there are a lot of things that can be done to give people the confidence and make them comfortable hiring people again.
Okay. Our second question will come from Helen Gifford, and we'll go to Mr. Fishman to begin.
In campaign advertising, Congressman Tierney has been accused of being a liar, if not worse, and Mr. Tisei of being a right-wing extremist. Would you please comment on the tone of this campaign and what it tells us about the issue of character?
I find it disheartening that it's come to this. One of the strongest statements I can make about our political environment right now was when the jobs numbers came out. Republicans believed the books were cooked, and Democrats believed they were not. I don't know what the truth is, but I'm worried about the fact that we have become so partisan that we can't distinguish the truth anymore. All we care about is what we are being told by the party masters. The fact of the matter is that, guys, for me, please, I would like to respect the terms of the debate. Please do not cheer, anything like that. At least during my time, I want to honor it. When we're talking about, I lost the question, I'm sorry.
Character.
Character, right. When we're talking about these guys attacking each other, I think the best thing that I can do is try to not get caught in the crossfire. I think that I can exemplify my character by standing up here and talking to you and looking you in the eye, being willing to answer questions directly and tell you exactly what I think. I would like to think that my positions have been consistent from day one. I would like to think that even those of you who don't know me very well have a pretty good idea from reading my literature and hearing me speak exactly what I stand for. I'm not running because I'm a politician. I'm running because I'm the average person. And I understand that for the average person, there does not have to be 100% agreement. Internal polling, when a candidate tells you they've done internal polling, that means they asked their parents and they asked their close friends. We did a small internal poll, and we found that these guys are in a dead heat. But the next question we asked was, if your candidate wasn't running, who would be your choice? And I came back at 80%. That's a significant thing. Part of it is saying that we're very partisan, and a lot of Congressman Tierney supporters are never going to support Mr. Tisei. A lot of Mr. Tisei supporters are never going to support Congressman. But there's something to the fact that only 20% of you find me objectionable. I think I'll close on a winning note.
Mr. Tisei.
Well, let me just say this. You're too loud. Now I'm too loud? How's that? Let me just say this. I am disappointed that the tone of the campaign has turned out to be what it is, because I do think that I've always run positive campaigns. I've run 4 positive commercials. I've sent out anything I'm responsible for. I've tried to be positive. I do think that some of the ads, obviously, that Congressman Tierney's running are really way over the top. I'm the only person in the entire United States running for office right now who supports gay marriage, who's pro-choice, who wouldn't sign the Nordquist tax pledge, that's being attacked for being an extreme Tea Party extremist. It just doesn't make any sense. It's laughable. And the fact of the matter is that I do have a record. I have 26 years of public service. I took over 10,000 votes in the legislature. And believe me, if I had a record of extremism, it would have been something that you would have heard about long ago. And I do think that, again, right now, it speaks to really, I think, the congressman's credibility more than mine, because I'm out there, I'm talking to people all around this district. I'm trying to say that, the country is at an important point right now that we really have to move forward, and we need people in Washington who are going to work together. I did that at the State House. I was through 3 fiscal emergencies. One of them, 1990, was a really bad one. The state was almost bankrupt. But I sat with Democrats and Governor Weld at the time, and we all got together. Nobody got what they wanted, but they put the state back on track. And when you look at what's going on in Washington right now, the place has become totally dysfunctional. And I do think that what we need to do is elect people who are independent-minded, who put the people first rather than a political party. And that's what I've done in the legislature. When Mitt Romney was the governor here, I voted with him 54% of the time. I voted against him 46% of the time. And when each vote came up, I'd say, what's best for the people of my district and what's best for the people of the state? In Washington, you have a group of people on both sides voting 99%, 100% of the time with the leadership. That's what Congressman Tierney has done over 16 years, 99% of the time with the leadership. And I do think that you don't have people, and again, on both sides, you don't have people who are putting the country first. And I want to assure the people of this district that when votes come up, I'm going to look like the medical device tax. I'm going to say to myself, what is best for the people of the district and what's best for the country? And that's the criteria that I'll use when issues come before me.
Mr. Tierney.
Thank you. Let's be perfectly clear about one thing. Bridget Tisei is responsible for all the ads from the young guns and from the right-wing extremists in Congress. And you ought to be ashamed. You ought to be thoroughly ashamed. I gave you an opportunity to say that we would keep out all of the super PACs and all the 501c4s, just like Scott Brown, to his credit, did with Elizabeth Warren, and you rejected it. You tried to lay on different levels. I agreed to every thing that you wanted, and you still didn't, because you knew that you had gone down and asked them to run the strategy of your campaign, which they say you asked them to do and they're doing, and you were going to take $3 million of their money. And the deal was you took their money to run one of the sleaziest and most misleading advertising campaigns. All right? And, you are misleading the public, but this is the strategy of the Young Guns and the Tea Party people on that. They're doing it throughout the country. They smear, and then they move on that basis, so you don't have to deal with the issues that are the ones that you don't want to talk about. The fact that you said that you would support the Republican agenda, you said that you were comfortable with it, you said that Tea Party's a godsend, you said that you would vote the current leadership back in, you said that you thought the Ryan budget was just a good start. So in order not to have to talk about that and those issues, you went out and you attacked my wife and her family as a way to try and get to me, all right, on that, and you do it over and over again. The fact of the matter is that if the issues of this campaign were going to be discussed, then this public would know that you stand with what has been the most conservative Republican Congress in about 60 years, and that their agenda is anti-women, anti-equal rights, and anti-middle class. And they're proud of it. They're absolutely proud of it on that basis. So it's a false equivalency to complain about it when I run an ad using your own words, in your own record. I mean, it's your record that was called a mixed bag on women's health issues. It's your record that said it was a full frontal assault on abortion rights. These are votes that you took, and this is not anything equivalent to the idea of going after somebody personally as a way to get your political ambitions resolved on that. So the fact is that you have a very mixed record on abortion, yet you now say you'll go down and support a party and put them in charge. You have an anti-abortion and anti-women's health record. You have a mixed record in a number of different areas on that. The same answer always comes, but this time you will go down and put in charge a group that says an agenda that is against, I think, the majority of things, if not all the things that this 6th district really needs. They would cut jobs, they would go after Social Security, they would change Medicare so that it would lose the guaranteed benefit, they would give tax breaks to millionaires, and we'd be the ones that have to pick up and pay for that. You would not be creating jobs when you cut back on infrastructure and education and job training and all those things you think are just a good start in the Ryan budget. So I think that is, what we've been doing is setting out what the record is, using your own words, using your own votes, and using your own statements now that this is a group that you will support.
Time. Okay. 30 seconds. Mr. Fishman?
Character, if you need us to define character, things are in really bad shape for this country. There's a reality, though, that you're going to get the character out of us that you expect. You're going to get the character out of us that we see coming from the masses. The campaign and the candidates are going to be reflections of the people. And so think about it. Think about what you want. Think about the example that you want to set for us. Because we want character in government, but we can't have character if there's not character everywhere. Government should always be a reflection of the people. Thank you.
Okay. 30 seconds, Mr. Tisei.
More than 30 seconds for after going through
You
that.
can save it for your closing.
No, let me just say this. What you just heard from Congressman Tierney is exactly what the problem in this country is. He's been rated as one of the 20th most partisan Democrat in the entire country, votes 99% of the time with the leadership. As far as his ads go, the Boston Globe had a story last week, Tierney ad misleading, and they went through the fact just how bad and off the wall it was. Today, Politico came out with a report that called his campaign one of the dirtiest in the entire...
Time.
You know, in that article that Mr. Tisei is referring to in the Globe state that his comments and his statement of going after the families was entirely wrong, and that he was the one who is misleading in that as well. This is going to be a campaign about choice, and it's not a false equivalency to say that the choice is, you know, whether you want this Republican majority that's been basically unable to get anything done because they're so partisan, or a majority that was the most productive Congress since 1964 that reached across the aisle and got things done, even when George Bush was the president for 2 out of those 4 years.
Okay. We do have a timer up front. And the next question comes from Susan Jacobs, and it starts with Mr. Tisei.
As editor of the Jewish Journal, it should come as no surprise that my question would deal with Israel. Do you believe that Israel has the right to defend herself against the looming danger of a nuclear Iran? And if so, what role should the U.S. play? Do you support a military response?
Well, I certainly think that Israel has every right to defend itself. And let me just say, I've been to Israel. I went for 2 weeks on a trade mission with Governor Salucci. And it is an amazing country. And the thing that's most amazing about it is that they share the same values as we do here. And when you're in Israel, you have the right to speak. You have the right to worship. You have the right to think and act as individuals. There's freedom of the press. And, you know, this country, Israel, is, you know, surrounded by a sea of, you know, instability in countries where basic human rights aren't respected. There are no gay rights in any of those Arab countries around Israel. There are no women's rights. And I do think sometimes here in America we lose sight of the fact that they are living in such a terrible neighborhood. We look at it as Americans from a pretty far distance. You know, when you live in Israel, you always have to be worrying about rocket attacks from Hezbollah. You know, if that happened in the United States and a missile was lobbed over from Canada, you know, and it hit Massachusetts, people would put up with that for 30 seconds here in this country. And that's the fear that Israelis live under every single day. And I do think that as far as the United States goes, we have to be very clear and we have to be very strong that Israel is our friend and that their interest more often than not coincide exactly with ours. So I would hope that if there is any problems there, that the United States would be a strong ally, a dependable friend, and do what we could to help Israel out as best we could. I'm going to be the congressman for this district in the United States, so I'm always going to put our interests first. But there's no better friend in the world that the United States has than the state of Israel.
Mr. Tierney.
As the congressman for this district, I've always supported Israel, of course, and the Jewish people, and that has been strong and unwavering on that basis. Israel has a right to exist, it has a right to live in peace, and it has a right to protect itself on its own soil against attacks on that basis. And we have a strong alliance and a strong friendship. We don't walk away from our allies, and we won't walk away from Israel. Now, I think actions speak louder than words. And so if you look at that time over history, I have supported every foreign aid military budget for Israel. I have supported giving them the qualitative military edge, and that includes David Sling, and includes the Iron Dome, which has already proven to be of good effect on that situation. I have approved the increasing sanctions against Iran. on that, and I think that starting with President Bush, the idea of having international sanctions and increasing them, and following with President Obama has been doing that, to the point now where their currency is devalued 40%, and starting to have an effect on that has put us in a position to be able to use diplomacy and to use sanctions and hopefully to get some results before time runs out. Let's be clear. You know, a nuclear-armed Iran is a threat to the United States and to Israel. It's a threat to the world on that, and we are not going to let them have nuclear arms. So we need to confront these challenges, and as allies, we need to consult ahead of time. And we need to make sure that we work together on this, and if anybody has a disagreement, we should resolve it behind closed doors and come out in a unified front to make sure on that. So we need to do this, and we need to keep moving forward. My actions speak louder than words, and I think it's been very clear entirely. Thank you.
Mr. Fishman.
So, I was raised Jewish. I'm not as Orthodox as my parents were, and nowhere near as Orthodox as my grandparents were. But I understand what Israel is and what it means. Israel is not just an ally to the United States. Israel is a place, homeland where the Jews said, in this place, we will be responsible for our own security. In this place, we will not depend on others, because in the past we have taken their assurances, you are safe here. In this place, we understand that we must defend ourselves against people who do want to eliminate Jews from the earth. That is the stated purpose of Iran. Ahmadinejad has said that Israel needs to be wiped from the face of the earth. The charter of Hamas, in the charter it says, you shall never make peace, you shall never work honestly in peace process, because our entire purpose is to eliminate the state of Israel. In the face of that thing, how can there be any question about whether or not Israel has a right to defend itself? How can there be any question about whether or not people have the right to preserve their cultural heritage? And that's what Israel is. The problem with our foreign aid right now is that we are giving foreign aid to everybody because we think that's how we can buy goodwill. We think that if we give Yasser Arafat, who had $1 billion when he died, we think that if we gave him $1 billion, he was going to be a friend. Yasser Arafat was never a friend to the Jewish people. He was never a friend to the United States. Saddam Hussein, we gave him tons of money. He was never a friend to the United States. He was never a friend to the Jewish people. We have a history of supporting countries. The largest arms deal ever, we sold weapons to Saudi Arabia. I believe it was a $60 billion deal. In Saudi Arabia, women are not allowed to inherit property. They're not allowed to drive cars. They're not allowed to be out in public without a man to chaperone them. Why are we selling weapons to these people? In Yemen, it is legal for a husband to rape his wife. Why are we giving foreign aid to these people? We need to understand that foreign aid has to be something that we know goes to the rich people in a country. Ron Paul said that foreign aid is taking money from poor people in America and giving it to rich people in foreign countries. And invariably, that is what we have ended up doing. We have to recognize that the way that foreign aid gets distributed into countries is a complete disaster at this point in time. The best thing we can do is say, there's a level of individual responsibility. And in supporting Israel, the Jewish people of America have recognized that. The diaspora has recognized that. We have taken it upon ourselves to make sure that Israel, even in the case of a president who is not an enemy of Israel, but he's certainly not a friend, even a president like that, we do not depend on the United States for the security of Israel. Israel depends on itself and on the collection of Jews around the world for its own security.
Okay. 30 seconds, Mr. Tisei.
I would just say I agree with what Dan said as far as foreign aid, and I would question whether the United States should be giving additional foreign aid to help bail out Egypt right now, where the Muslim Brotherhood, just recently during the attacks on our embassy, you know, they tweet in Arabic to go down and protest and incite people to attack the embassy, but in English they say something totally different. And these new governments that have come to being, I think the United States, again, has to be very strong and very clear that, that they need to respect religious differences, they need to respect individual rights, and if they're going to be friends with the United States and allies.
Mr. Tierney?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I always support foreign aid, particularly military foreign aid for Israel, and I think it's important that we continue to do that. So it's a degree of foreign aid that you want to support, and I think that's important. But I was one of those people working on the Kerry Lugar-Berman bill with respect to Pakistan that was upset with the way that our money was going directly into the treasury of Pakistan and not getting the results that should have been there. And we worked under that bill to make sure that there were conditions and that the money would not be released until we were sure that what was the stated purpose of both governments against the existential threat that we shared was actually being accomplished. So there has to be a high degree of accountability on foreign aid when it is given.
The final question I didn't answer, I apologize for not getting to it, is what is the threat of a nuclear Iran? It's important to recognize that Pakistan already has nuclear weapons. Pakistan was hiding Osama bin Laden. Pakistan, within their military, has Taliban active members. They have the bomb. Isn't Pakistan already a great threat to us? How much of a greater threat is a nuclear Iran? I don't want to see Iran get a nuclear weapon. I think that it absolutely is a threat to the world. However, I am not willing to commit sending troops to Iran to engage in another war.
Thank you. Okay, our next question comes from Lisa Kosan, and it goes to Mr. Tierney.
Speaking of the tenor of the campaign, we need a congressman who will work for the common good of the country, and not a particular party. So what would you do, what could you do to bring détente to this frosty relationship that currently exists in the party system and in Congress?
Well, I think if you were to ask every member of Congress, they all think they are working for the better of the country on that, and I think that you have to give people's motives some credibility here. I think what it comes down to is that we have a party system. We have a two-party system in this country. In order for it to work, the majority at any given time has the responsibility to reach across the aisle, to be open to the idea of working with the other party and to making and accepting some concessions and moving forward on that. I would make sure that we did that again, because we've done it in the past. All right, in 2007 and 2010, when the Democrats were in the majority, we passed over 400 bills that were signed into law. 70% plus of those were bipartisan on that basis. And two of those years, as I mentioned earlier, we had a Republican President, George Bush, that we didn't necessarily agree with philosophically. But we passed science, technology, and engineering and math programs on that, and the Competes Act that allowed us to get more teachers in there, more innovation, more science investments, and move forward. We passed an energy and security bill. We raised the minimum wage. When the president's financial situation started to erode in this country, we tried to work with him. And even though we didn't agree on that rebates to 130 million people were the best way to go, we did that as a way to try to stimulate the economy and move forward. So time after time, it was shown to do that. This particular Congress is sort of the Tea Party Congress. It's the one that doesn't believe in government. I think that you take two experts, one a centrist and one with the American Enterprise Institute, which most people believe to be more conservative. In 40 years as historians of Congress, they say this is an extremely ideological group, that they don't give any credence at all to their political opponents' positions, that they are uncompromising and take great pride in that. And they've only passed 61 bills. That's 1/4 of the bills that the Do-Nothing Congress passed when Harry Truman was complaining about them. They're not interested in getting things done. They're interested in making political statements. 33 votes to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. Not to fix it, not to improve it, not to try to work forward, but to just basically try to rip apart something that had already been democratically decided. This is not going to move this country, so I think that what we need to do is we need to have people in responsible positions that will reach across the aisle, that have a track record of doing that are not so ideologically driven on that basis. And I think that's the case. When you look at the votes I've made, they're for a stronger education system, therefore making college more affordable and accessible, therefore making health care available to people, for protecting Medicare, for making sure we don't privatize Social Security, for making sure there's an environment out there that will create jobs and that people have workforce training and skills to take those jobs. These are the things that aren't Democrat, aren't Republican. My opponent might say that he thinks they're liberal because he doesn't agree with them, or because it brings your percentage to a certain amount of votes with a party, but there are things that this district count on. These are things that people in this district want done. And that's why they've sent me back 8 times, and that's why they'll send me back again. It's the middle class that needs the attention, and we need to get those things done, not be worried about giving millionaires tax breaks at our expense. Thank you.
Mr. Fishman.
In terms of being partisan, when I go to Congress, I only intend to work with the other libertarians there. But realistically speaking, in the case that Libertarians don't sweep the other 434 seats. There is an understanding that we have been a two-party system. And it's incredible to people that when they see me up here, the number one thing that people say to me is, "You're so articulate, you're so well-spoken." Why would you say that? Why would it be shocking to you that a citizen who wanted to run for office could express political ideas, could express an interest in the future of the country? It shouldn't be shocking. It should be a wake-up call saying, this is what we are. This is Massachusetts. We have a history. John Adams, who wrote our Constitution, the first citizen senator, the first citizen soldier, the idea that citizens are the backbone of our government and that we all have a civic duty. I think one of the worst things that's happened to the United States is that we don't teach civics anymore in high school. It used to be an important thing that we could understand how our government worked and why our government worked this way and where there were ideas where we should compromise, but where sometimes we shouldn't have to compromise. Democrats complain a lot about an obstructionist Congress, but the Republican Party today is the Republican Party that the Democrats made by using a small majority to push through legislation that a lot of people disagree with strongly. We have a Bill of Rights, we have a Constitution so that we do not have a tyranny of the majority, so that we don't have an idea that 51% of the people can say, you 49%, or as Mitt Romney would refer to them, you 47%, are no longer people that we consider worthwhile. We're going to use our small majority to inflict upon you what we think is best for everybody. And that's not what we're founded on. We're founded on the idea that we should each be able to choose our own destiny, that we should each have as much liberty as possible so long as we don't interfere with anybody else's liberty. And that doesn't mean that 51% of the people can say, this is not okay for you. It's important that we understand, too, that ideology is not a sin. The idea that you are committed to an idea, the idea that this idea is so important to you, is something that we should respect. When we talk about the fact that there have been 33 votes against the Affordable Care Act, those congressmen are not going home to lose elections. They're going home and they're going to win elections because they are voting for people that represent and agree with them. We can argue that the ACA is good, we can argue that the ACA is bad, but what we have to understand is that there is a strong difference in the country. And when there's a difference like that in the country, we're not meant to be one monolithic government. We're meant to be 50 different states. We can decide these things at a smaller level and disenfranchise less people by saying government doesn't have to be this monolithic.
Mr. Tisei.
Well, I definitely think that, again, what I said earlier, the problem in Washington right now is that you do have people who are so dug in and so partisan, they're not putting America first. And you know, between Congressman Tierney and I, we have two different histories. You know, his history is voting 99% of the time with the leadership. I have a different history, having served in public office. I represented a district where there were only 10% Republicans, so I was always bringing people into the fold and trying to build coalitions. And I was in the minority the entire time that I was in the state legislature, but I was able to get a lot accomplished. I was able to help draft the Welfare Reform Act here in Massachusetts. I wrote the anti-fraud provisions in that bill. I was one of 6 people who wrote the final bill. It was a landmark bill for the entire country. I passed a piece of legislation that made it easier for people to become teachers in Massachusetts. I set up an alternative certification process. So if you were changing careers, you didn't have so many obstacles. You could go into the teaching profession. I had a number of people who came to me who worked in the healthcare industry that were being fired because they were reporting substandard care. I sponsored, wrote, and passed a Whistleblower Protection Act to provide whistleblower protection for healthcare employees in hospitals and nursing homes. Somebody came to me and said, you know what, I'm a veteran. I can't believe there's no veterans preference for state-owned housing in Massachusetts. I passed a bill to do that. And I just want people to understand what I did when I was in the legislature. I spent my time on the Human Service Committee. I believe that government does have a role to play in people's lives. There are some people in Washington who don't think we need a government, and then there are other people that think the government should do everything. I think that the government should be there to help people who can't help themselves and who are needy and who are deserving. But I was named Legislator of the Year by the Massachusetts Human Service Providers, Legislator of the Year by the National Alliance for the Mentally Ill, Legislator of the Year by the Mass Association of Retarded Citizens and the Disability Developmental Disability Council, Legislator of the Year by the YMCAs of Massachusetts, Legislator of the Year, by the home health organizations. And I just want people to understand that that's what I'm going to spend my time doing as the congressman. I'm going to try to protect the programs that mean the most to the people who need help the most. And that's my view of government. That's what government should be doing. My oldest sister is brain injured. She lives in a group home in North Reading. It was built with help partly from a federal housing grant. It was also, she's also on Medicaid and depends upon that to live. And I understand that there are a lot of people out there that do need government help and assistance. And I want to be a congressman who protects those programs and tries and really tries to help those people.
Okay. 30 seconds, Mr. Tierney.
That Mr. Tisei, who says that he thinks there is a role for government, would go down and support the exact party that has said there is no role for government, the one that is making sure that they obstruct everything that's attempted to be done, the ones that want to shrink government so it drowns in a bathtub, the ones that want to see Medicare wither on the vine. So Mr. Tisei going to Congress is not going to change that radical majority in the Republican side, and it isn't a case of Democrats thinking government should do everything. We think that we should make sure that college is affordable and accessible, and that's what I've worked on, that Medicare is there with its guaranteed benefits, Social Security is not privatized.
Mr. Fishman.
Every face on Mount Rushmore is a third-party candidate. There's a point in time at which we understood that it doesn't have to be just two parties. And the conversation is emphasized. The idea that conversation is the important part of the process. And there's not a conversation going on right now. Right now, the two parties are set on demonizing each other and blocking what's going to happen. It doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be that way if you guys don't want it to be that way. The problem is that right now, we're split.
Mr. Tisei.
I do think you need leaders who are problem solvers. That's what I did in the legislature. I worked with Democrats across the aisle. I have the history of being able to do that. That's what our country needs right now to get back on track. Nothing's going to change if John Tierney is reelected. We know what his record is. He won't go across the aisle. He votes 99% of the time, and he's rated as one of the most partisan Democrats in the chamber. And we have it all within our ability to send, not just in this congressional district, but all over the country, to send new people to Washington who are willing to work together and act like adults.
Okay. Our next question comes from Helen Gifford, and it goes to Mr. Fishman.
As Massachusetts residents, you have all had a chance to see how health care reform, the model for Obamacare, has worked out. Can you tell us what you've learned from the Massachusetts model that leads you to either support or oppose the Affordable Health Care Act?
One of the things that bothers me most about the Affordable Care Act is the idea that it was forced on the entire country by a small majority. We're meant to be 50 United States. We're meant to be 50 engines of innovation. And whatever you want to say about the Affordable Care Act, it came out of Massachusetts, which I believe we are a sterling example of innovation in this country. It's a role that Massachusetts has always had. The health care plan was innovative. Whatever else you want to say about it, Massachusetts, it was the right plan for them at the time. It is not the right plan for Mississippi. It is not the right plan for Texas. And they have voted that way repeatedly. What gives us the right to ignore their preference? What gives us the right to say, this plan is going to be one size fit all? What gives us the right to say, we want to shut down all the 50 engines of innovation now, and we're going to go with just one basic central party plan? Now, in terms of specifics about the plan, I think that there's a real problem with the idea of saying that there is a right to health care. And I want to explain what I mean about that. Health care is provided to you because of somebody else's labor. And you never have a right to somebody else's labor. I believe that there is a duty on a society to provide health care for everybody. And that's on all of us. We have a duty to provide that for everybody. But you don't have a right to say that a doctor has to work 24 hours so that there is health care available. You don't have a right to say that a doctor or a nurse or a hospital has to say, we're going to lose money on this process because we are going to provide this all the time. We have to find a way to say that healthcare is delivered by healthcare providers. Healthcare providers are citizens who must be afforded their own liberty all the time. Our system may not be 100%, but it's pretty good at this point in time. We have the best healthcare for many things in the world. But there's a reality that there's a financial cost as well. The Francis Burr Proton Therapy Center down at Mass General essentially cures cancer for a lot of people. It's an amazing technology, but it costs $150 million to build the machine, and it requires a giant building to have it. You have to have a cyclotron. There's a reality that we cannot provide that level of therapy for everybody in the country. The resources aren't there. Passing a law saying, well, we want the resources to be there, doesn't solve the problem. We have to recognize the fact that there is a mathematics that has to take place, and we have to say, how can we do this? And it has to be done with partners. The partners are the patients, but the partners are also the caregivers. And by trying to take the caregivers out of the equation and running them with government, we stand a risk to weaken what is an excellent healthcare system.
Okay. Mr. Tisei.
Well, I was proud to vote in favor of the Healthcare Reform Act here in Massachusetts. It's not perfect. I'd say a couple of things about it, though. Neither Democrats or Republicans got everything they wanted. They sat down, they worked together, because we wanted to try to get everybody in Massachusetts insured. We were at 92% when the bill passed, and we were able to get everybody up to 100%. And again, that was working together. And what Dan said is true. You know, the health care bill on the national level was just rammed through. No amendments, you know, and damn the torpedoes. We're going to get this bill passed and we don't care how we do it. And that's why it's become such a divisive bill in our country right now. The bill that we passed here in Massachusetts was only 70 pages long, 70-something pages. The bill that they passed in Washington was 2,700 pages. A lot of the congressmen never even read the bill. The bill in Washington had 21 tax increases. We had no major tax increases in the bill here in Massachusetts. The bill out of Washington turns the whole healthcare system upside down. We didn't do that here in Massachusetts. We didn't fiddle with, you know, 1/5 of our economy here. And we didn't interfere with the doctor-patient relationship, which is what happened with the national bill, that they changed that basic relationship. So I do think that it was a success here. And what people don't realize is we went to the federal government and we got a special deal. We asked for a waiver. We got additional money. And that's the way it's supposed to work. We set up an innovative bill here in Massachusetts. And I do think that what should happen is, rather than a one-size-fits-all plan being imposed upon every state in the country, other states should have the same opportunity that Massachusetts had to devise their own plans, because you might get a state that there's only 80 or 85 or 70-something% of the people insured. Let them do the same thing that Massachusetts did. Incentivize them to get people insured, rather than coming in with the hammer and forcing a system on every single state in the country. You know, so obviously, I think a lot of people waited a long time on the other on the Democratic side of the aisle. They waited 40 years, and when that bill came up, they threw everything into that bill but the kitchen sink. And I do think that you could, you know, you could go down right now and you could sit down and you could put together a plan that offers basic protections. We have protections in our bill here in Massachusetts, just like the federal government does. Basically, the pre-existing conditions would have to be covered, and that kids are covered up until age 25 here in the state. We were able to do all of that without turning everything upside down. And there's a lot more about the bill, I think, that we could talk about if we had more time.
Mr. Tierney.
Let's start with talking about the bill. The reason Massachusetts was able to take care of pre-existing conditions was that they had a mandate that everybody had to be covered. And you voted for it, because there's no other way to make sure that everybody that's a student or gets out of school and doesn't have their own coverage can stay on their parents' plan till they're 26. There's no way that you can take care of pre-existing conditions, and there's no way that you can get rid of annual and lifetime caps unless you spread it out so that everybody is covered and has the ability to get the insurance, and then you're able to do that. And that's what you did in Massachusetts. So you also then said, Mr. Tisei, that you thought that Massachusetts was a great model for the nation. And it turned out that you were right. The nation took the Massachusetts model and essentially put that into play But then, like mini-me for Mitt Romney, you decided when the Tea Party started getting angry and upset about it, you were going to go around and agree with them that this wasn't, after all, such a good model. On that. The fact of the matter was, it was a good model for the country, and that, you know, having everybody covered allows for the fact that the insurance is able to do all those things, that we were able to extend the life of Medicare by 8 years, that we're able to give seniors preventative health care and give them wellness exams every year without cost to them, that we're able to close the donut hole that had been opened up in 2003 by the Republican majority, and we're able to do this in a way that was neutral in the sense of income or whatever. We're saving $129 billion in the first 10 years and $1.3 trillion in the second 10. And I would disagree a little bit with Dan on this one too. I think that the access to health care and affordability to health care is a right. It's an absolute right on that. And nobody ever said, nor does the health care bill say that, you know, that doctors are forced to do anything on that. But what we do say is that every American should have access to health care, and that health care should be affordable, and that this is a way to do it under this plan. And it was a plan that had over 70 hearings in multiple committees of Congress, and any number of amendments were brought in there and voted on. And in fact, a good number of Republican bills and amendments that had been presented by Republicans were incorporated into the bill, despite the fact that Republicans did not vote for their own bills and amendments when it went through. They were dead set of opposing, obstructing this from the get-go. But the fact of the matter is, we'd reached across the aisle, we took some of their measures, we incorporated them into the bill. We went through 70-odd hearings, and we had amendments, and we moved forward on that. This is a bill that if people think it can be improved, then let's sit down and improve those parts that you think can be improved. But taking 33 votes, you know, to eliminate the Affordable Care Act without offering one thing to make it better or to improve it or to replace what you're taking away is a lot of rhetoric, but it doesn't show us any action in terms of making for a better future in health care, for protecting people that need to be protected. So I think that, you know, that it's a little naive for Mr. Tisei to think that he's going to go down there and become a part of this Republican majority, and they're all of a sudden going to say, you know what, instead of taking 33 votes to repeal and not replace or not fix, we're going to decide that we're going to all of a sudden do it because you said so.
Okay. 30 seconds. Mr. Fishman?
Full disclosure, I worked 9 years at Mass General helping to train nurse practitioners. Nurse practitioners can step into healthcare right now and make an enormous difference. I bet a lot of you have seen a nurse practitioner recently. They can prescribe medication. Right now, government is getting in the way of nurse practitioners doing their business because legislation is being passed that say nurse practitioners have to work for doctors. They have to work under a doctor's supervision. It's not the way that the plan was set up. The idea is that government doesn't have to get involved in this sort of thing. We have an educational procedure. We have hospitals that oversee their own health care. We don't need government involved.
Mr. Tisei?
Well, I would just say that bill definitely, if it's not repealed, which it should be improved. And I would just point out that every single opportunity to improve the bill, the congressman has disapproved of and voted against. Just vote in particular, 1099s for small businesses. There was a provision in the bill that required every single small business to file a 1099 form for every single expenditure. It was crazy, and most of his Democratic colleagues voted to get that out of the bill. Nikki Tsongas, Representative Keating, a number of them did it.
Time.
But even on something like that, he wouldn't change the bill.
Time.
The only changes that have been offered.
Go ahead.
The difficulty, any changes that have been offered to the bill, whether it's the 1099 or that, have always come with the price of paying for the cost of doing that by taking away health care benefits and rights to others. So if we stop having false choices, we can probably move forward on some of that. I would have supported that without the false choice aspect. The fact of the matter is that if you're going to try and fix the health care bill, if you think there's anything wrong, it's going to take Democrats in the majority to reach across the aisle and try to get this done. This current majority has made clear 33 times that they're all about repeal and not about offering any alternative.
Okay. Next question from Susan Jacobs.
In your careers as public officials or in the private sector, what are you most proud of? And on the flip side, what would you like to take back, given the chance?
Mr. Tisei.
Well, I would say the proudest moment of my campaign, and it really symbolizes my career, is when I had my Democrats for Tisei form, and Democratic legislators who I served with in the State House came and stood beside me and endorsed me because they had worked with me and they knew that I would be a good congressman and that I am somebody who can work across the aisle. And it just made me feel so good knowing that, they were the opposition party while I was in the State Senate and in the House, but they had worked with me enough that they felt just totally comfortable and confident coming out and supporting me. And I do think that that meant a lot to me, and I think it should tell people in the district when you have a Chip Clancy coming out and saying that he was going to support me, and Paul Casey and other legislators I've worked with, that I am somebody who can work with people. So I'd say that that's the thing I'm most proud of, is the fact that I have been able to get along with people. I have crossed the aisle, and I walked out of that State House after 26 years feeling really good that I had spent my time wisely and I had got a lot of things accomplished.
Mr. Tierney?
I think I'm proud of the fact that for 20 years I was in private business and I represented families, I represented small businesses and towns and municipalities, and always working for values and principles for the middle class. I served on the Board of Trustees at Salem State College, now University. I was the president of the local Chamber of Commerce after serving for a number of years on the board. And I've always said my goal is to represent people that were like the people of my family and the way I grew up. And I took that to Congress when I went there, and I've fought for those same values, and I'm proud of the fact that we've concentrated on education at all levels, and higher education, public higher education in particular, on health care for people, on making sure we protect Medicare and Social Security, on making sure that we work to create a way for people to be trained and skilled for the jobs that are out there, also making sure that we protect all employment by raising the minimum wage and making sure that work pays, by making sure the conditions on the job are fair and that people have a right to organize, and that we can move forward and have a good society that's healthy on that. And that's what I think I'm proud of. And I'm proud of the fact I've done it by working across the aisle as well. I've done bills with Jim Leach, I've done bills with Trey Gowdy, I've done bills, the Wartime Contracting Commission, done bills, had committee hearings with Chris Shays and Mr. Flake and Mr. Chavez, all varying degrees of conservatism on that party, and we've done some very bipartisan investigations and bills on that basis. But I think I'm most proud of is the Republican Party went further and further to the right and became more and more extreme. This party that Mr. Tisei said he'd support, he supports the Ryan budget and he supports their plan, as that was happening, people like Bill Saltonstall, who formerly was a Republican. I think is respected by a lot of people of being the kind of Republican that Massachusetts used to have, and maybe Mr. Tisei wishes he was. But the fact of the matter is Bill Saltonstall switched parties at the end, and he supported my campaigns. And when I asked him about what happened, he said, these people down there in the House in Washington, this group of Tea Party, extreme right people, they're not the Republicans that I grew up with. They're not the Republicans that represent me. And I'm proud that people that understand that they're too extreme have come over to support my campaign.
Mr. Fishman?
Should I have the privilege of serving you all in Congress, it will be my third career. My first career, I was a special education teacher. I did that for 7 years. I worked with a very severe population, and I loved it. It was a fantastic job. I would wake up every morning, like, yes, work today, because there was something about the job, something about the interaction that appealed to me. I felt like I was really making a difference. I went back to school in 1996 and became a computer scientist. It was a job. I enjoyed what I do. I like it now. But 3 years ago, I made a decision that I could actually go back and use what I know now about computer science and improve special education again. I'm in a unique situation to take what I know about computer science and apply it to the special education community and say, we can make special education better. There are ways that we can bring technology to bear. There are ways that we can use the data that we collect. But I have to say, I'm a little proud of this too. I'm proud of standing up at this point in time. I didn't do it because I wanted to be a politician. I didn't do it because I wanted power. I did it because after September 11th, I wanted to find a way to serve my country. I was too old to join the Army. I thought about applying to the FBI. Although I'm a strong supporter of Second Amendment rights, I should never have a gun in my hand. But this I can do. I can stand up and I can speak and I can contribute to the conversation. And so I'm very proud of this, and I'm very proud of you guys, because everybody has talked to me and embraced me and said, we can do better. We, the electorate, can increase the conversation. We can do better. We can make government better. Now, I'm going to go ahead and answer the other part of the question, something that I would take back. I was offered a job at Amazon in '99. I probably should have taken that. Thank you.
30 seconds, Mr. Tisei.
Well, I would just say, in addition to government experience, I'm proud of the fact that I made it through the recession with my business. It was a lot of sleepless nights worrying about how I was going to make the payroll, pay the bills, keep the doors open, and keep people employed. It was a real trying time. I can understand what people are going through who own small businesses and who have had to deal with this great recession that we're in, and I thank God that I was able to get through it.
I'm a little troubled about what I perceive some hypocrisy in that statement. I agree that times have been difficult and were probably difficult for Mr. Tisei, but he made a statement before Mitt Romney was known for making a statement that, in his words, 50% of the people didn't pay taxes, as if in a denigrating way, as if they were freeloading or not being useful to society, when in fact, for 2 out of the last 6 years, Mr. Tisei didn't pay these taxes, despite having a resort house in Martha's Vineyard, having business property, having multiple rental properties, having a home, and having a state payroll, a tax paid by the taxpayers, and still not pay any taxes. What makes that right for him not to pay any taxes with other people, seniors, students, veterans returning?
Mr. Fishman.
The other thing that I'm proud of is that I like to think that in my time in Massachusetts, I came here in '94, I really have grown to embrace the difference of character. I came from Texas. You guys are nothing like Texas. I like to think that I really have realized that there is an amazing aspect to Massachusetts, an incredible diversity. And the North Shore especially, I really enjoy that I have finally learned to become a resident. I'm happy in Beverly. I'm happy with what's happening right now. One of the reasons that I'm running to represent you guys.
Time. Okay. Each candidate is going to have a chance for a 2-minute closing statement. And we start with Mr. Tierney.
I get first close.
Yep.
First question.
You get the first close.
All right, thank you. Well, first of all, I want to thank the Salem News and the Jewish Journal, our panel, as well as my opponents, for what's been a spirited debate tonight. I think we've seen that this election really comes down to a simple choice. On the one side is my Republican opponent, Richard Tisei, who's accepted $3 million from the Tea Party, who said he supports the current Republican majority in Congress, and who called the Tea Party a godsend and the Ryan Republican budget a good start. He even said he's comfortable in the Republican Party with their agenda. So if you agree that the Tea Party has got it right and got the right idea, if you like what you've been seeing coming out of Washington with the Republicans in charge and with their plans to end Medicare's guaranteed benefits, to restrict access to birth control, to raise taxes on the middle class in order to pay for tax cuts for millionaires, if you think Mr. Romney and Mr. Tisei were right that half of the Americans, including veterans, seniors, and working women with young children, are freeloaders and not paying their fair share in taxes, but millionaires deserve to pay less, then Mr. Tisei is probably somebody that interests you. I'm on the other side. If you support President Obama, if you believe like I do that fighting for the middle class to get a fair shake is the right thing, if you support my votes to give 17 different tax cuts to small businesses and a payroll tax cut for the middle class instead of more Bush tax cuts for millionaires, if you believe in protecting Medicare and that seniors deserve a secure retirement with dignity, if you support laws that I've passed to expand training and for green jobs, to hold insurance companies accountable by giving you a refund if they spend too much on overhead, and to keep student loan rates down to keep the dream of college open to all, then I'm your candidate. Voters really do have a choice this November. A vote for Mr. Tisei means a vote for keeping this right-wing Congress in power, and I have a different path. A stronger middle class, focusing on creating jobs, equality and choice for women always, and in fighting for the people of this district first, not the interest of Wall Street or big oil or an extreme group in Washington. I hope I've earned your vote on November 6th, and I ask you for the opportunity to serve again, and thank you for the opportunity tonight.
Okay, we've got 2 more statements. Mr. Fishman, 2 minutes.
Thanks. There's a website out there called votecorevalues.com. It's kind of a Tea Party purity test. All three of us failed. However, I passed a couple of things. I am a strong fiscal conservative, and this is something that differentiates me from the rest of these guys. I will not vote to raise the debt ceiling. I remember that the T in Tea Party is an acronym, and it stands for taxed enough already. We are taxed enough already at this point in time. We can grow the economy to increase revenue, but we don't need to change the level at which we are being taxed right now, because we are being taxed enough already. And this is something that I think we really can look at and say, where is the disconnect right now? Because Republicans and Democrats have both shown a consistent history of growing the size of government. And that's what makes me different from these guys. And this is where I have to ask you for your vote. Because if you don't vote for me, if you like what you've heard up here, but you don't vote for me because you think I can't win, you're telling the parties those ideas are worthless. Those ideas couldn't get 1% of the vote in the election. And that's not the way it should be. Your vote counts, and your vote has to count for what you believe in. This election, I'm asking for you to vote for somebody you like. I'm asking you to vote for your conscience. I'm asking you to say, this amazing gift that has been given to us in this country, the ability to vote our opinion, you have to use it. And if what I've said appeals to you, you should vote it. Because if you don't vote for me, the only message that gets sent is, those ideas appeal to nobody. Thank you.
Okay. 2 minutes, Mr. Tisei.
Well, thank you. I just want to say this is a good opportunity to change things, and Congressman Tierney is Exhibit A of what's wrong in Washington, D.C. Nothing will change. And I also want to respond to his statement. You know, the Boston Globe asked the both of us to release our tax returns. I did it. I hooked them up with my CPA. I had a tough time, no doubt. You know, our company almost went under. I had to borrow money just to keep things going, keep the doors open for people. But I would say the congressman didn't release his taxes to the Globe. He threatened them with a libel suit. And when he was finally forced to do it, lo and behold, over $230,000, according to federal prosecutors, that went into his household, he didn't pay any taxes on. And that's the problem here in this district. Now, I do think that this district deserves a lot better than what we've had over the last couple of years. And I do think that this is an important election to change the way things are done in Washington, D.C. You know, I have a record of being a problem solver. I have a record of working across the aisle. I have a record of being an independent-minded legislator. That's exactly what we need in this country right now to get this country back on track. And that's the type of congressman I'll be for this district.
Okay. That concludes tonight's debate. I'd like to thank the Danvers Public Schools for use of this auditorium, and the staff and volunteers at Danvers Community Access Television for helping us put this together. They taped it. They'll be sharing it with other community access stations, and everybody will get a chance to see it. Again, I'd like to thank everybody for coming. I'd like to thank the candidates for participating and for the panel. Thank you.